Welcome to Podcast Summaries, where every week we break down powerful ideas from 8 to 10 top podcasts to help you grow, heal, and thrive while saving time. If you find this summary helpful, please subscribe. Your support keeps this journey going. Here is a rundown on if you feel lost and alone, watch this. The Key to Making Real Adult Friendships, featuring Simon Sinek by Jay Shetty. Jay Shetty wonders what has surprised Simon Sinek most about human behavior in his research.
Simon Sinek reflects that despite the differences in context and goals, the problems people face in their personal and professional relationships are remarkably consistent. He notes that the same principles that apply to effective leadership in the workplace also apply to personal relationships, such as listening, giving and receiving feedback, and having effective confrontations. He emphasizes that these skills are essential for building strong relationships, whether personal or professional.
Jay Shetty shares his own experience of traveling to different cities and observing that despite local quirks, people everywhere laugh, cry, and get excited about the same things.
Simon Sinek suggests that people are drawn to what makes them feel psychologically safe, which often means finding common ground with others who share similar interests, values, or backgrounds. He notes that while it's easy to feel a sense of belonging when we're part of a group that shares our values, it's also important to recognize that we can be part of multiple tribes simultaneously.
Jay Shetty observes that people often feel disconnected and lonely, and that this sense of disconnection can be a major obstacle to building meaningful relationships. He notes that people may not always recognize the root causes of their feelings of burnout and exhaustion, and that these feelings can be symptoms of a deeper sense of disconnection.
Simon Sinek shares a story about a military leader who discovered that her troops were feeling burnt out and overwhelmed, but that the root cause of their burnout was not the tempo of their operations, but rather a sense of loneliness. He notes that the leader was able to address this issue by checking in with her troops as human beings and helping them feel less alone.
Jay Shetty reflects on how people's sense of belonging and identity has changed over time, with the decline of traditional institutions such as church and the rise of more individualized forms of community.
Simon Sinek shares a personal story about how he realized he was a bad listener in his intimate relationships, despite being a professional listener. He notes that he had to learn to apply the skills he used in his professional life to his personal relationships. In the past, neighborhoods were smaller, and people would often sit on their front porches watching out for each other's kids. This sense of community helped to create a support system for families. However, as people moved to wealthier areas, they began to put up fences and raise their own kids, losing that sense of community. Simon Sinek recalls visiting Dharavi, the largest slum in Mumbai, where he witnessed an incredible sense of community despite the challenging living conditions. He notes that when people feel like they belong, they look out for each other, and this sense of belonging is essential for building strong relationships.
Jay Shetty agrees, sharing his own experience of feeling a strong connection with a guest on his podcast simply because they shared a similar background.
Simon Sinek explains that this sense of connection is not just about superficial similarities, but about sharing common values and beliefs. He shares an analogy about meeting someone from California and Michigan and feeling an instant connection, highlighting how people look for anything that gives them a sense of safety and belonging when they feel like outsiders. Simon Sinek emphasizes the importance of understanding one's own values and beliefs and expressing them openly. He shares his own experience of learning to articulate his why and how it helped him connect with like-minded people. He notes that when we focus on our values and beliefs, we can find people who share our perspective, and this can lead to deeper, more meaningful relationships.
Jay Shetty relates to this, sharing his own experience of wanting to define himself by his purpose rather than his profession.
Simon Sinek agrees, noting that our identity comes from our beliefs, not our credibility or accomplishments. He shares an example of how he lists his values and beliefs before his credentials, emphasizing that this is what truly connects him with others. Simon Sinek discusses the idea of reinvention, suggesting that it's not about changing who we are, but about finding new ways to express ourselves. He notes that when we know our why, we can adapt and evolve without losing our sense of purpose.
Jay Shetty agrees, highlighting the importance of being flexible and open to new opportunities.
Simon Sinek shares his thoughts on knowing when to quit or walk away from a relationship or pursuit. He notes that if the sacrifice is worth it, we should keep going. But if it's not, it's okay to walk away.
Jay Shetty asks Simon Sinek about how to know when it's okay to outgrow someone or keep growing with them. He notes that sometimes we outgrow people, and that's okay, but we should be honest with ourselves and others about whether the relationship is worth fighting for. He notes that ghosting is horrible and can cause unnecessary pain and anxiety for the other person.
Simon Sinek adds that it's messy and imperfect, but that's what makes it beautiful. He shares a personal anecdote about a conversation he had with someone who was counting the seconds of a hug to release oxytocin, and how he encouraged them to just feel the moment instead of relying on data. Simon Sinek also talks about how people are becoming too data-obsessed, trusting their watches and apps more than their own feelings. He emphasizes the importance of trusting one's gut and listening to one's body.
Jay Shetty chimes in, sharing his own experience with feeling unwell after consuming a certain amount of protein. This, he says, is what keeps people healthy and happy.
Simon Sinek's response is a powerful reminder that communication is key in such situations. This simple act of vulnerability can help create a safe space for open and honest conversation. I'm sorry. That really sucks. He stresses that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to dealing with difficult emotions, but being present and willing to listen can make all the difference. The conversation takes a deeper turn as Sinek discusses the importance of acknowledging our own insecurities and fears. The topic shifts to the fear of what others think, particularly when it comes to pursuing new ideas or ventures. Simon Sinek responds by saying that anyone who wants to make an impact in the world has to get used to the idea that not everyone will like them. He shares his own approach to dealing with criticism, which is to take it seriously if it comes from someone he respects, but to be more open-minded if it's just a disagreement. The conversation emphasizes the importance of being true to oneself and not letting the fear of others' opinions hold us back from pursuing our passions. He notes that this can lead to a distorted view of our value as individuals, where we feel awesome when we get a lot of likes, but worthless when we don't. This phenomenon is not limited to social media, as we can also see it in how we seek validation from others in our personal relationships. He emphasizes that it's essential to recognize that people have different needs and preferences in relationships, and that it's not about being the life of the party or the most outgoing person. Simon Sinek is making a crucial point about the importance of communication in relationships. He also emphasizes that it's okay to have different needs and expectations in relationships, and that communication can help navigate these differences. Simon Sinek is discussing the importance of acknowledging and taking responsibility for our actions, even if they were unintentional. He shares an example of how saying sorry doesn't mean you're wrong, but rather that you're taking accountability for your actions. He notes that this can help to diffuse tension and resolve conflicts in relationships. He also emphasizes that communication is key in relationships, and that it's essential to listen to each other's stories and perspectives to avoid misunderstandings and conflicts. Simon Sinek responds by saying that presenting ourselves as perfect sets up an unfair standard for others to live by, and that it's actually our imperfections that make us beautiful and relatable. He believes that we fall in love with people's imperfections, not their perfection, and that it's the space to be imperfect that's earned in relationships. Simon Sinek shares that he thinks it's essential for people to present themselves as they are, messy and all, because it's liberating and allows others to be imperfect too. He notes that we don't reveal all our imperfections on the first date, but rather earn the space to be imperfect as we build trust and intimacy with someone.
Jay Shetty then asks Simon Sinek a series of rapid-fire questions, starting with the best advice he's ever received.
Simon Sinek responds by saying that sometimes it's better to just shut up and not have all the answers, and that it's a relief to not have to know everything and be right all the time. When asked about the worst advice he's ever received, Simon Sinek jokingly says that it's when people tell him to trust them because they've been doing something longer than him. He notes that he tries to ignore people who give him that kind of advice. He also shares that if he could create one law that everyone in the world had to follow, it would be to outlaw the harp, which he jokingly says is only good for dream sequences. Thank you for tuning in. Please subscribe, check out YouTube channel, and just remember, subscription is only £1 or $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.